This is a tutorial for my 4th graders on how to make a terracotta warrior or just any other figure. If you just want to make a person and you don't want to make a warrior, you can use this same basic idea for making any kind of figure. So we're using terracotta because we're being inspired by the terracotta warriors of China. And what you want to do first here is you want to break off a piece that kind of fits in your hand like this. You don't want anything too big or too unmanageable. If your clay is too hard, I said in class, if the clay in your kit is too hard that you can't stick your thumb in it, then you should dip it in water. If it's super hard, even put like a half a cup of water in the bag, plastic bag with it, and seal it up. And then you can leave it for like a whole day and then check on it the next day and see if it's soft enough. All right, so you want something like a little bit shaped like an egg, and then you're going to stick your thumb in it like this. And what you want is, you want like a pinch pot, but you want it to be kind of a long pinch pot. So see how I've got it on my thumb and then I'm squeezing it like this to make it kind of long? So that's what you want, because you're creating the base, which is going to be your person's legs. Okay? And you might notice this is starting to crack up a little bit, and that's okay, right? Because I said, if anything cracks up, you can always add a little bit of water to your cracks, and it'll moisten the clay a little bit. You can smooth them out like later. Okay, so don't worry if you get little cracks. All right, so now I have basically a pinch pot, but it's like a long pinch pot. And I'm going to turn it on the table like this and pat it down like this so I get a flat bottom. Okay, so now I have a nice flat bottom. And this is a really good place to put your name. So you would just put your name here using your toothpick. Okay, so now this is going to be the legs. So if we look at my example here, see, this is the legs part. Now, if you're making like a person wearing a big skirt, you can just leave it like that. If you want them to have 2 legs, then take one of your fingers or your thumb and just start creasing it right here. And you will start to create the illusion that there are 2 separate legs here. And you could do it on the back too, right? You could do it down the center and the back as well. Okay? So now that looks like 2 separate legs. Later, you could even start to sculpt out a little shoe, like this. If you want to have shoes showing, or boots or something. So it's really up to you how you want to shape those, but just remember these are the legs. Okay, so these look like some legs. Now we're going to make the next part of it. And the next part is the chest. So I'm going to break off another piece of clay. This piece is going to be a little smaller. Because the thing you got to remember is, we can't fire things in the kiln that are too thick. We got to keep everything relatively thin, because if it's too thick, it's going to break in the kiln, because it'll have an air bubble or some moisture in the middle of it, and that'll cause it to break or explode in the kiln. So I make a ball first, and now I'm going to try to shape it a little more like the egg, or like a box, because this is going to be the chest part. So maybe make it like a little longer, and this will be the guy's chest, or the woman's chest if you want to make a female character. It's up to you. Okay, and the big thing about this is to make sure it's not too thick. Take your pencil, make sure it's not any thicker than 2 pencils. So it's thicker than 2 pencils this way, but if I turn it this way, okay, now it's more like 2 pencils thick. So as long as at least one of the ways, it can be thicker one way, but if it's the other way, if it's no more than 2 pencils thick, I'm good. All right. If it's thicker than this, if it's more than 2 pencils thick, it's just going to be too thick and it'll probably just break in the kiln. All right. So there's my chest. I'm going to tap the bottom of it so I can get a nice flat part. And then here's my legs, and I'm going to tap the top of this to get it kind of flat. And this just makes it so that I have an area where I can attach this. There's 2 flat spots to attach it. And then what do I have to do to attach it? Well, I have to scratch to attach. So I get my toothpicks, and I'm going to scratch up the top of the legs. So see, there's the legs. And I'm scratching up the top. And then here's going to be the chest, and I'm scratching up one side of that. And I'm going to add a little bit of water to both sides. And then I take my wet scratches and I'm going to put it together. Make sure you get it on there really good, and you can even smooth it on if you want to, but if you press it on really good, you don't need to smooth it. If you still want to have like a line there, like that's his belt or something, you know, you can just make sure that you press it on really good. Okay, so there we go. I have legs and some feet down here, and now here he has like a chest. So now he needs a head and some arms. So I'm breaking off a piece for the head, rolling it into a little ball. And again, make sure it's not, thicker than 2 pencils side by side. That's what you want. And now I'm going to attach this to the top of my figure, which means I have to scratch to attach. So I'm scratching one side of the head here, and I'm going to scratch the top here. And I'm going to add a little bit of water. Okay, and now I'm going to press that head on. See how I'm really pushing it on there and making sure it's on there nice and tight. Okay, all right, so now we have a head, a chest, 2 legs. Now we just need some arms. Now when you make the arms, I said this in class, you want to make them both at the same time. So I just broke off a piece, and now I'm going to break it in half, because you want to make sure your arms are the same size, otherwise it's going to look like he has some kind of like deformity. So I'm noticing this one's a little bigger, so I'm going to break off a little piece of this one so that they're going to be the same size. Okay, and then I'm going to roll them into balls and then coils to make little arms. And you can keep holding it up against your sculpture to make sure that it's the right size, right? See, so I want to make sure it's not too big or too small. Nope. So that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to try to make this one the same length. So again, make your arms the same size, make them at the same time beforehand. They don't look quite the same size. This one looks a little longer. I think I have to take a little extra off of this one. I think it was still a little too big. So you see, that's why you make them at the same time, so that you can make sure that they're the same size, and then your person won't look weird, like they have one big arm and one little arm. Unless you want that. I mean, if you really want that, you could do it on purpose. Okay, so now I have 2 arms about the same size. They're not too thick. These are actually about as thick as a pencil, so that's fine. And now to attach them, I'm going to put some scratches where it's going to attach. So that'll be like the shoulder, and this is where it's going to attach to the body. Do the same thing on the other one. And here's my figure. So the arms are going to attach right where the shoulders would be. So put some scratches there. Put some scratches there. Add a little bit of water to my scratches. And then I can attach these arms on. So I'm just going to press that on there really good. Make sure it's nice and attached. And you could pose your arms, right? Like he could just have his arms straight down, or I could have him holding, putting his arm up or something. I can pose it a little bit. So maybe this arm's going to be out like that. And then here's the other arm. I'm putting a little water on those scratches. I'm going to attach this arm to this side. And maybe with this arm, I'm going to have him kind of pointing out like this. So you can have them now. If you're worried about them breaking, just have the arms straight down. That's probably the safest if you're worried about them breaking. But if you want to be adventurous and you want to have the arms pose out in different ways, you can always do that, right? Here. Okay? You could have them doing whatever you want. Now, at this point, you have created all the basic parts of your figure. And this is the point where your creativity comes into it, and you can make it up however you want. So you can add some hair. You can grab other little bits of clay, and you could give them a helmet, or you could add hair for the person. You can draw a little face for them. One nice little way of making a face is if you just take your finger and you press in one side and then you press in the other like this, it'll kind of automatically create a place for 2 eyes and then like a little nose. And then you could just draw little eyes in there with your toothpick. And you can create like little nostrils for the nose and give him a little mouth. You can sculpt little ears. You can draw little designs on his clothing. You can add other things. So in this guy that I made, this is the one I made in class, and I added some extra stuff to it. I drew little circles to give him kind of a belt. I drew just some crosshatch on his chest to make it kind of look like armor. I gave him a little spear and a little helmet. So you do whatever you want to do to your figure. Like I said, it doesn't even have to be a warrior. It can be whatever you want it to be. And if you have enough clay, you can make more than one of these. You can make some little animals, whatever you want to make out of your clay. I encourage you to use up all the clay that you have left. The only rule about working with the clay for anything that you want me to fire is make sure that if it's really thick, if it's thicker than 2 pencils like this is, make sure it's hollow by making it a pinch pot first. The rest of it, it's okay as long as it's not much thicker than 2 pencils, then you're okay. And I'll be able to fire that for you. Okay? And have some fun doing this. And then I'll fire them for you and we will paint them later. Good luck!